In the early hours of the 7th of June 2018, a body is found in Kirriemuir, Scotland.
And they make a horrific discovery.
The deceased has been found in a remote location, very little CCTV, no witnesses.
Police are called to investigate this unprecedented crime.
It wasn't a normal sort of crime. You don't see a police presence of that scale in a town like Kerry unless there's been something.
Who's his friends? More importantly, who's his enemies?
I think it's worth reminding ourselves that in the majority of murder cases, the victim and the killer are well known to each other.
The victim's digital footprint reveals crucial evidence about the murder.
I feel like it shows how calculated the whole thing was and how calm and composed she was, knowing ultimately what was taking place while she went home and relaxed.
Kirriemuir, often known as Kirrie, is an idyllic burgh in Angus, Scotland.
Angus is a rural county situated on the east coast of Scotland. It's known for its diverse scenery, right, from like rugged coastline and then more inland to like the Angus Glens. There's a lot of farmland in the area and it's bordered by the Cairngorm Mountains. There's some rich history in the area in the form of Glamis Castle and Arbroath Abbey.
Kirriemuir's a small agricultural village in the Angus region. It's about a 35-minute drive from Arbroath. Very nice place to live, great family place, very close-knit, very rural. Everybody knows everybody, one of the type of places, and not much goes on. Especially when darkness falls, there's not particularly anything open, nobody's really going about, and a particularly family-friendly place to live.
Kirriemuir is a lovely little town. It's the town I grew up in, went to school there, all my friends were there. It's quiet, it's peaceful, it's pretty, we're famous for J.M. Barrie and Peter Pan.
Typically or historically there's been a lot of farmers or tradespeople that reside in the area and a lot of people that are commuters, you know, they're residents there but they commute to local towns for work, so Forfar or Dundee.
There's not a lot of crime that happens. The crime rate is very low. Violence in particular is particularly low, and serious violence is pretty much non-existent.
But a shocking discovery is about to change everything.
It was the early hours of Thursday, the 7th of June 2018, when a couple of workers for the Royal Society Protection of Birds arrived at Kinnordy Loch, a nature reserve, a number of miles away from Kirriemuir, and they make a horrific discovery. They discover a burnt out car, and lying beside the car, a very badly burnt and charred human body. Police are called and they descend onto Kinnordy Loch and they meet a scene of horror. They look at the body and they realise this person has been violently and horrifically murdered. One police officer said in 26 years of police experience, he had never come across a body as badly disfigured and brutalised.
There's a lot of aspects of policing that you just take, you know, for granted day to day, but something like that is extremely shocking regardless of whether you're a police officer or not. It's not something that you see every day, and I think it really comes down to the individual in terms of how they were to react to that individual situation, just like any serious crime and witnessing that, or turning up to the aftermath of a serious crime like that.
Upon police being contacted and attending the crime scene, it would have escalated the incident majorly, especially due to the steps that had been taken to cover up the crime that had been committed, the ultra-violence that was used, and in particular the vehicle that had been burnt out.
Police cordon off the scene in the hopes of preventing information being leaked to the media.
a decision that's made by the senior investigating officer, so that would be the person in charge of the overall incident and the overall murder case in this case. It's a decision that is taken after a lot of consultation and a lot of consideration in terms of what evidence or what information to release in order to ascertain what you could potentially get back.
I was working, it was in the morning. I was contacted by a contact to say, do you want to head out and about? There's an awful lot of police in Kerry, there's a helicopter over Kinnordy Loch, there's something going on. So I went into the town and there was police presence in the town and went out to the road out to Kinnordy, and it was completely closed off by the police. There was no access along that road. Being local, I thought, oh, well, I know other little places to take me in, trying to be smart, but no, the police had every access, even a little path, that not many people know about. It was all shut off. So it was a case then of, okay, what's happened? Through people in Kerry, through contacts, through friends, I was getting snippets of what had actually happened. But nobody at that point knew, and these stories, they grow arms and legs, and you've got to sift through to get to the truth of it. And obviously in touch with the police press office to find out. Not getting a lot at that point. But I think the one thing that people were aware of, that whatever had happened, it wasn't a normal sort of crime. It sounded pretty bad, it seemed pretty bad. You don't see a police presence of that, scale in a town like Kerry unless there's been something.
Detectives inspect the scene for any source of identification on the body or the car.
The body had significant injuries in terms of cuts and blunt force trauma. And due to how badly burnt both the car and the body were, initial identification proved extremely difficult.
The car was so badly burnt out and charred that there was no identifiable or distinguishable features about the car to lead to its identity.
Registration plates of the car were not present, so the investigators were able to find the VIN plate or the engine number.
And when police looked at that, it was registered to a white BMW N1, which is a relatively rare car in that part of Scotland because it was a very expensive car. And that just made police believe, was this some sort of financial falling out amongst members of a criminal organisation?
Regardless of whether it's attached to serious and organised crime or not, in that particular case, it was a serious crime that had been committed regardless of whether it was associated to a larger crime group, whether that be from, a big city or wherever. The process of investigating that doesn't change. You have an inner cordon and an outer cordon, and you really try and preserve the evidence as best you can.
Unfortunately, due to the damage done to the car and to the body, there was nothing that could lead them to identifying who the body was. All documentation in the car had been burnt. The pockets or anything belonging to the individual had been burnt. They did discover a mobile phone, which, whilst burnt, they still had some hope they could get to work, but unfortunately they couldn't. What they did have, however, was the registration of the vehicle, which was registered to a man called Stephen Donaldson. But police, once again, didn't know if Stephen Donaldson was the registered owner of the car or if he was the body found beside the car. That had to be established.
Later that day, Stephen Donaldson's mum and dad reported him missing. They were worried because they knew that a body had been found at Kinnordy Nature Reserve. They knew the previous night he'd been up that neck of the woods, he'd been up in that area, so they were fearing the worst.
We actually got in touch with the police and reported Stephen missing, and after making contact with them, 2 detectives came to the house and took any information that we could give them regarding any identifying marks that he has, and we told them that he had a tattoo on his shoulder.
These tattoos were still visible on the remains that were found next to the burnt out vehicle, and that provided a match. It was then confirmed that the deceased that was found, that was the body of Stephen Donaldson.
Any death message, regardless, is really difficult to deliver. But on this particular case, given the severity of what actually happened to the victim in this case, it's made all the more harder.
You're still trying to, sort of exist as a family, because we've got the grandchildren there as well. And it was very, very difficult, and it was like walking on eggshells sometimes, Everybody had their own feelings that were pretty much all the same. Disbelief, hatred for whoever's done this, all that kind of thing. But not really saying much about it, if that makes sense.
Police confirm the body to be that of Stephen Donaldson, but many other questions remain unanswered. Who did this? Why? And was this a once-off killing, or are there more to come? Kirriemuir, Scotland. On the 7th of June 2018, the body of 27-year-old Stephen Donaldson was found brutalised beneath a burnt-out car. With no immediate leads, police need to learn more about Stephen to find out how, why, and who was responsible for his murder.
Due to the limited investigative opportunities that are available at that time, the deceased has been found in a remote location, very little CCTV, no witnesses, apart from the workers that found him, but they can only offer little information. You have to build a picture of his life and get a background on him. Who's his friends? More importantly, who's his enemies? Does anyone have a motive to harm Stephen? What has he been involved in the days and weeks leading up to his murder? And try and establish how he ended up in that car park at that particular time and how he came about sustaining fatal injuries.
Stephen Donaldson was a 27-year-old oil refinery worker. He worked offshore. He was from the town of Arbroath in Angus. He was a very popular young man. He worked very hard. He had a good job, which was well paid.
Highly thought of by friends, family. He was someone who appeared to be extremely well liked, funny, and friends have described him as someone who nobody had a bad word to say against.
Stephen was a great kid, but just like any boy, he was mischievous, the same as everyone else. He loved sport, very clever. He just loved cars, bikes as well. He had quite a few cars and 2 or 3 bikes. It was just like normal petrolhead, if that's a word for it,
As part of the investigation, the investigators would have looked into the intelligence surrounding the victim, the intelligence surrounding anyone that appeared to be involved. Having done that, there was no ties to serious and organised crime. They had spoken to friends and family. They had done all their background checks in terms of what intelligence was available of the victim, of his, close-knit group of friends and, family even. But there was no ties to serious and organised crime on this occasion.
However, whilst doing that, they still couldn't find a motive. It was a bit of a bizarre mystery. Who would want to do this to this popular young man? He was known as Stevie D. He was called a bit of a practical joker who loved to laugh and night out with his friends. The police could find nothing to point to an initial motive as to why this young man would have his life ended in such a horrific way.
Stephen's autopsy reveals vital information about his murder.
Stephen had sustained absolutely ferocious and devastating injuries. He had received several blows to the back of his head, his neck. These blows were given with such force that severed his spinal cord. He'd been stabbed, he'd been slashed, and he'd had defensive wounds as well, showing that he actually fought for his life. He was unsuccessful, he was overpowered, and the violence was that horrific that eventually resulted in his death.
Due to the position of some of the lacerations or how the attack had been conducted, it's been assessed that this may have even happened in his car and that he was removed from the car after this took place.
The level of violence that was used in Stephen's murder shows that it was personal. It wasn't a spontaneous act.
An overkill, almost like someone that you know and you have a really strong hatred for. I don't think that's too strong a word to use on this occasion. I think as well, just given the fact that some of the wounds appear to have taken place whilst he was sat in a car, there's an element of him having been ambushed to some degree, or a surprise attack that's taken place.
With most of the physical evidence destroyed, police turned to any available digital evidence.
The police, when they initially looked within the vehicle just for any signs of any evidence, they did find a mobile phone, but it was really badly burnt. Now, with some burnt mobile phones, depending on how badly burnt they are, you can take them apart, right? You can find the SD card or the memory, or you can access the actual card data itself. Now, sometimes that requires a bit of manipulation in terms of putting things back together. However, in this case, this phone was so badly gone that it was just not something that could be done, and there was no way that it could be analysed.
The police, when they spoke to Stephen's circle of friends, were passed a very useful piece of information. They were told that Stephen's phone had recently been broken, wasn't working properly. He had taken it to an Apple store in Aberdeen, and the police went to that store. They examined their CCTV and they could see Stephen there. When they spoke to the worker in question who dealt with Stephen and his complaint, his inquiry, the worker confirmed to police that Stephen had backed up his mobile phone data and information on another device, and the police had to find that device. That turned out to be Stephen Donaldson's laptop, and when police got into his laptop and they found the mobile phone data which had been backed up, they discovered that he had been in a relationship with a 19-year-old woman called Tasman Glass.
So in this particular case, with it being a murder investigation, you want to look at the broadest spectrum of data that you possibly can, right? So you don't really want to rule anything out when it comes to the data, so it's just something that takes some time. Now, as the investigation develops and as you begin to understand who are persons of interest or who you really want to hone in on in terms of some of those communications that have taken place between the victim and potential suspects or persons of interest, you can start to narrow that data down. However, until such times you do have, a broader lens to start off with. So it is something that takes time, and it has to be that way because you can't start to filter out what could be obviously essential or important evidence.
Police look into Tasman Glass to get a better picture of her and Stephen's relationship.
Tasman Glass was 19 years of age, so she was a number of years younger than Stephen. They had met the year before. They had established a relationship relatively quickly. She was described by those who knew her as a normal young woman. She was an aspiring singer and actress. Police spoke to Tasman Glass, and she told them that on the night in question, Wednesday the 6th of June, she had been swimming with her friends Stephen Dickey, Callum Davidson and Claire Ogston. She said that after the swimming was over, they went back to Callum Davidson's flat, and she left them to go and meet Stephen at Peter Pan Park in Kerrymere. She said she arrived there and waited for Stephen. He didn't show up. She then said that she went home, conversed with her mother for a brief period, and she went to bed and went to sleep. And she said she didn't contact Stephen or attempt to contact him until the next morning, when she said she sent him a text message. Tasman was expecting a child to Stephen. She had been treated very well by Stephen. He had bought her a new car, which she subsequently had written off, and he was owed £1,000 by her as part of the insurance payout, which she had not yet gave him. So belief was that she was going to meet him that night to give him back the money that she owed him. The police were under the impression that this was the father of her child. They found her demeanour strange, unusually calm, cool, collected, bearing in mind her boyfriend and father of her child had been brutally murdered and his killer or killers were still out there. The police were initially a little bit perplexed by this. The police want to verify what Tasman Glass is saying. As part of that process, they go to speak to the people she said she was with that night so they could verify her movements. That was Stephen Dickey, Callum Davidson and his partner Claire Ogston. All three confirmed her account that they had went swimming. They went back to Callum and Claire's flat and they were drinking beer, chilling out, and they said the Tasman had went to Peter Pan Park to meet Stephen, and the rest of them fell asleep around 12:30. So that was their version of events, and the police then checked Tasman's Apple Watch. The Apple Watch was linked up to her Wi-Fi router at home, and the data from that router in connection with the Apple Watch indicated that she did arrive home just after 11 p.m. as she claimed, and it also took her heart rate, which was very normal, very stabilised, wasn't peaking or going up or anything out of the ordinary. So police believed that she did go to sleep as she said. So at this point, Tasman Glass is a witness, and her friends are at that point witnesses as well.
So police then start to look at Stephen Dickey and Callum Davidson. Standard in any police investigation that you do background checks on who is featured in the inquiry, and immediately Stephen Dickey and Callum Davidson are persons interested in the investigation. They're not suspects, they're more leaned towards witnesses at that time. They have only featured in the investigation so far after being named by Tasman Glass as being swimming with her the night that her boyfriend went missing. But red flags start to get raised when police start looking into who Stephen Dickey and Callum Davidson are. They're known as local bullies. They've been previously involved in violence and intimidation towards locals. Callum Davidson was previously charged with serious assault and was subsequently found guilty of assault to severe injury at court. So they're not nice individuals to start with, and more needs to be done, and they need to be looked into further to see what their connection, if any, to Stephen is.
Police suspect Stephen's girlfriend and 2 men may have killed Stephen, but they need solid evidence to prove it. Kirriemuir, Scotland. Police are investigating the brutal murder of 27-year-old Stephen Donaldson on the 7th of June 2018. His girlfriend, 19-year-old Tasman Glass, provides police with a solid alibi, but suspicions arise about her and 2 friends.
Stephen Dickey and Callum Davidson were spoken to by the police. They provided almost identical version of events, which is suspicious in itself. They said that they had a few beers, went to sleep about midnight that night at Claire Oxton's house.
As well as examining Tasman's Apple Watch, police also confiscate the phones of Stephen Dickey and others. When they examine Stephen Dickey's phone, they see that he hadn't received a phone call or a text message for 2 weeks, which is very strange and very hard to believe.
Phones tell a lot in this day and age. Everybody uses a phone for this thing or that thing. So part of the inquiry team's investigation was to contact the phone company. There are several requests that the police can put into a phone company under what's called the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Scotland Act, and one of these was billing request. So a billing request is in-out call data, and in-out call data shows incoming and outgoing calls made to a particular phone number or made from a particular phone number. Even if it's right from the phone by the user of that phone, the phone company's still going to show that in the logs. You can't delete it from there. The user can't delete it from the phone company logs. So the sheer amount of phone calls that were made to and from Stephen Dickey's phone contradicted what had been on his phone and just proved that he had deleted a vast amount of data, further proving his involvement in something shady that went on.
When an investigation like this takes place, a digital forensics investigation, and that data is acquired, it will be presented in what is effectively like a database. So you can look to filter on telephone numbers. Now you'll have telephone numbers that are attached to persons of interest or suspects or, specific relationships that you want to, as part of the murder investigation, understand how those were and how that had played out prior to the incidents taking place or the murder taking place. Now, that can just be filtered in the same way that you can filter a spreadsheet, and the text information will be there and it will be a ledger.
But it's Stephen's own device that reveals crucial information.
Police further examined Stephen Dickey's phone and discovered that he had an app on the Apple phone called a Significant Locations app. That app can store information regarding your movements and places you're close to and places you have visited. When police examined the app data, they discovered that between 12:40 a.m. and 12:51 a.m, the significant location was the health centre in Kerrymoor that Stephen Dickey's phone was near. That contradicts what he tells detectives, that by 12:30 they're all sleeping in the flat after having consumed some beers.
When it comes to locating people based on their mobile devices, now whenever you're carrying your mobile devices, you walk down the street, it's hitting different phone masts. So it's hitting off the nearest phone mast effectively just to facilitate telephone calls at times. And that's how, a triangulation can take place based on the location of that phone in relation to the location of that phone mast. As you're moving around with your phone and it is pinging those masts, there's timestamps that are associated with that. There can be, depending on whether it's 2G, 3G, 4G, there's effectively a diameter circulation, effectively it can show you rough distances in terms of where you are in relation to that phone mast, and you can have the identification of that phone effectively that has made that request to that phone mast.
The police then go to the CCTV cameras at the health centre, and at 12:49 a.m. they can see two distinct figures walking past the health centre, which matches the data on the Significant Locations app on his Apple phone. And the police assume that one of those people is Stephen Dickey and the other presumably is Callum Davidson.
In this instance, it appears that it's been very, very simple. They've got CCTV of Stephen Dickey, they've got CCTV of Callum Davidson, and they've got phone data, which contradicts what Stephen and Callum are telling the police. This appears on right away to be easy. It's not easy. It's very, very complicated. It's very complex. There has to be a CCTV coordinator appointed along with CCTV officers. They need to complete viewing logs. They need to seize the relevant discs. The footage isn't always available at that particular time. It can involve going cross-border. It can involve contacting other countries who store this data on clouds now. It's not always, even though the camera's in a particular place, doesn't mean to say that the physical evidence is going to be that particular place. There's also an entire intelligence department that's going to be doing downloads of phones. And you can imagine in this day and age that there is a vast amount of data stored on mobile phones, so it can take weeks, months, sometimes to go through a single phone. So it's important that priorities are set right away. Specific dates are set and worked back from. Specific keywords are used and searched through messages at particular times. You can't go through hundreds of thousands of WhatsApps and texts. Specific contacts are selected to focus in on, especially when analysing digital data.
So as part of this investigation, the police seized Stephen Dickey's Apple Watch, and this was found to contain a lot of information that contradicted Stephen Dickey's version of events. Now, information that's contained within an Apple Watch is interesting, and it presents itself in a really user-friendly and readable manner for police when they investigate it. Again, effectively, like I alluded to before, presents itself almost in a database fashion, where there's steps that are recorded under the Apple Health facility within the watch. So there's steps, there's distances, there's your heart rate, and it's all effectively filterable so that it can be read easily with associated timestamps. So when Stephen Dickey was stating that he was back within a house during that time, and the analysis of the phone was found to have climbed 11 flights of stairs and had over 400 metres of movement, and this was all during a time that he had claimed to have been sleeping. Treasure trove of information, and the police really relied on that a lot in this case.
Police at this point decide to go back and speak to Tasman Glass, and they go and visit her at her place of work, a local cafe, and they find this bizarre behaviour by Tamsin. They find her standing there in the cafe, preparing food, and chatting to them very matter-of-factly, very generalised conversation, as if she was talking about her next holiday or her next day off or her plans for the next day. Very strange reaction from her. In fact, it's almost say it was a sign of psychopathy, because again, this is the father of her expected child, her boyfriend. She's acting very strangely. Anyone else would take the police to the side, would focus on what they're saying and try and help as much as possible. But she's very cool, calm, collected. But it was a worthwhile visit because she did tell the police that she had been having a sexual relationship with Stephen Dickey and that she and Stephen Donaldson had split up a number of months before in April. Police thought that they were dealing with a devastated girlfriend and a mother-to-be who was in love with Stephen Donaldson. But when Tamsin revealed that she had been having sexual relations with another man, Stephen Dickey, it pointed to flaws in her initial statement, and it made the police see her in a different light than just a witness trying to assist with their inquiries. I think it's worth reminding ourselves that in the majority of murder cases, the victim and the killer are well known to each other, and that's something else. When the police were struggling to come up with the motive, they would have been aware of that. The police, now having been aware of the sexual relationship between Tamsin Glass and Stephen Dickey, decide to go back and speak to Claire Ogston again. And this is a major breakthrough in the overall investigation and its arc. Claire Ogston tells the police a completely different version of events from her initial statement. She tells the police that on the night in question, Tamsin Glass is visibly upset because she is receiving phone calls from Stephen Donaldson. She says that Tamsin Glass, Stephen Dickey and Callum Davidson leave their home and travel to Peter Pan Park. Davidson and Dickey come back in the early hours of the morning, and they tell Claire Ogston that they subjected Stephen Donaldson to a physical attack and that Tamsin Glass was present in the initial stages of the attack.
During the course of the incident, it was found that Tamsin Glass, who had evidently had been there at the very start of this incident starting to take place, she left early, right at the very start of it, and returned home. And during this whole time, she's been wearing a smartwatch. When she returned home, she calmly entered the house, got ready for bed, spoke to her mum, went to bed, and presumably had a good sleep. Evidence that was acquired from that smartwatch showed that, her heart rate was a low, resting heart rate. Considering what she was involved in at the very start, and ultimately what she walked away from to go home, I feel like it shows how calculated the whole thing was and how calm and composed she was, knowing ultimately what was taking place while she went home and relaxed.
But that sense of relaxation would not last long.
After this new statement from Claire Ogston, police immediately go and arrest Stephen Dickey, Callum Davidson and, crucially, Tamsin Glass.
Can you have us down by your side, please? Do you want to speak to the lawyer in private before being questioned by the police? The reason you're being kept in custody is an allegation of murder.
All three are non-committal during the interview process. They are very cold, laid back. They give non-responses like no comment. They aren't letting anything away.
Is there going to be any forensic evidence linking you to the murder of Stephen Donaldson? No.
Will your phone have any information on it, any evidence or material relating to the murder? No.
Is there any reason for the police to have forensic evidence linking you to the murder?
Police are particularly perturbed by Tamsin Glass. She sits there, she stares at the officers, straight through them. Very cool, calm, calculated, collected. There's no expression of emotion. At one stage, the detective asks her, does she know how serious this is? And she still doesn't respond with any kind of normal human reaction.
Okay, Tamsin, you're responsible for the murder of Stephen Donaldson.
You have been arrested on the suspicion of Stephen's murder. Okay? How did he deserve to be left
in that car park with these injuries.
She was as cold and as calculating as can be.
Was you involved in the plot to kill Stephen Dawson?
No comment.
Was it so you would stop hassling for the money?
No comment.
Stephen Dickey or Callum Davison tell you what they've done. Well, they did tell you, how did you react? Is it like you're sitting now, or would you have been shocked? Did you hear what I just said to you there? And your demeanour's still no changed. And you're still sitting there.
No comment.
Emotionless. You can sit and stare at me all you like. That'll not put me off.
Tasman, for a 19-year-old girl to go home, go to her bed and then provide a calm, no-comment interview is displaying psychopath behaviour. She showed absolutely no remorse whatsoever.
Tasman's apathy leaves investigators unsettled and without the necessary answers. Police are confident the 3 suspects in custody are responsible for Stephen Donaldson's murder, but without confessions, they'll need an airtight case to prove their guilt in court. Kirriemuir, Scotland. Police have arrested 3 individuals in connection with the horrific murder of 27-year-old Stephen Donaldson on the 7th of June 2018. His ex-girlfriend, 19-year-old Tasman Glass, and 24-year-old Stephen Dickey and Callum Davidson. However, in questioning, none of them are cooperative. Police need to source further evidence to ensure a guilty verdict.
CCTV inquiries were undertaken, captures Callum Davidson cycling throughout Kirriemuir town centre. Not a care in the world, wearing quite distinctive clothing at the same time, at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Were you out on the bike on the early hours of the morning? And we have CCTV evidence of you out with the house at that time. How will you explain it?
Forensic examination was later conducted of the bike Callum Davidson was riding. Blood lifts were obtained from the handlebars and a DNA profile was obtained from the blood lifts. The blood lifts matched Stephen Donaldson.
Which proves that Callum Davidson had to be in the vicinity of Stephen Donaldson when he was murdered. Bearing in mind, police had no proof that Stephen Donaldson knew Callum Davidson or that Callum Davidson knew Stephen Donaldson. So this was a huge breakthrough.
That's absolutely compelling evidence when you couple it with all the other strands of evidence that are there that night.
Despite difficulties in questioning the trio, their motives eventually become evident.
At the inception of the investigation, police weren't too hopeful. There wasn't a lot of evidence there. However, the hard work of the investigation team revealed multiple strands of evidence and not only one motive but several motives. First motive is that Tasman Glass owed Stephen money. He's been phoning her constantly, asking for his money back. She didn't want to give him it, or she wasn't giving him it.
You said that you were due Stephen £1,000. Have you got financial difficulties?
No comment.
Struggling for money?
No comment.
You told Callum that you couldn't give Stephen the money back as your bank account had been frozen. We've been contacting you for a while asking for it.
Another motive is that Stephen Dickey is now in a relationship with Tasman Glass. Stephen Dickey's ego's been damaged because his girlfriend's getting contacted by her ex. He doesn't like that and wants him out of the picture. And you've also got Stephen Dickey wanting him out of the picture because his ego can't handle it.
We've been told that you were unhappy that Tasman was speaking to Stephen Donaldson. Were you jealous of their relationship?
Didn't know they had a relationship, as I told you from the start.
I think it is a bit of jealousy. I think you're not happy that she's meeting up with Stephen Donaldson and she's speaking to him on the phone.
He couldn't contain his emotions during that interview. The other suspects that were interviewed, especially 19-year-old Tasman Glass, provided no comment interviews, sat there emotionless and didn't give much away. When it's put to Stephen Dickey that he was a jealous type, immediately his ego gets the better of him. He tries to say, no I'm not, denies any involvement, but it was confirmed that he was a jealous, unpredictable, violent individual.
All three are tried for the murder of Stephen Donaldson, beginning in April 2019.
The trial took place at the High Court. Stephen Dickey and Callum Davidson both tried the coward's way out.
During the murder trial, Stephen Dickey and Callum Davidson more or less turned on each other and blamed each other for Stephen's murder, suggesting the other one had inflicted the fatal or serious blows. I think in most of these cases, however, the truth is somewhere in the middle. I think both men were equally to blame, and both men were involved in the actual physical assault of Stephen Donaldson.
The jury ultimately rejected both their respective positions, and both were found guilty of murder. Stephen Dickey was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 23 years. Callum Davidson was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 24 years. So Stephen Dickey since committed suicide in prison, so now only Callum Davidson will be available to apply for parole.
Tasman Glass was given a 10-year sentence.
Tasman Glass was found guilty of the lesser charge of culpable homicide, very similar to what manslaughter is in England. It's the unlawful killing of someone when you didn't intend to kill them. And I think what's weighed the jury's mind on finding her guilty of culpable homicide was that they didn't believe she was present when Stephen was actually killed. That was purely by Stephen Dickey and Callum Davidson.
Tasman's lighter sentence is poorly received by Stephen's family and police alike.
When she was sentenced to considerably lesser time than the two others, people were pretty angry at that, and there was an awful lot of talk. She's got off lightly. She was the one behind all of this. And that didn't go down well at all.
Very frustrating in terms of the sentences. When sentences are imposed, judges and law lords are bound by a set of rules and regulations when handing down sentences. Sometimes you could be expecting someone to get a life sentence and never get out of prison. They could be sentenced to 8 years and out in 4. Particularly frustrating, especially in terms of serious crime.
Without her getting Stephen there, this wouldn't have happened. And she got the least sentence, and under Scottish law, they were all charged murder, the same offence, so they all should have got the sentence.
I think the role of Tasman Glass in this murder cannot be understated. She is an integral part of this plot. She is very much centrally involved. I'm not so sure this murder happens without her input, because Stephen Donaldson did not know Callum Davidson or Stephen Dickey, and they did not know him. Tasman Glass knew all three. Metaphorically, she puts the weapons in their hands, because she is the one who mentions to Callum Davidson that she is, in her words, being harassed for the money by Stephen Donaldson. She is the one that is having a sexual relationship with Stephen Dickey and taking the calls from Stephen Donaldson in Stephen Dickey's presence. She was cold, cool, calculated during the interview process for a reason. And that's because she was deeply, deeply involved. I think her role cannot be understated.
Digital forensics played a vital role in the solving of this murder case.
Would like to thank everybody involved in catching them, and as I say, the sentencing apart from one, the work that Procurator Fisk have done, all the rest of it, I just think everybody done their job excellently, and without all the forensics and all the rest of it, I don't think they would have got away with it, but I think it was still leaned towards them. But the forensics, obviously, they were the thing that nailed it down, basically.
So in this particular case, it was used for the very first time, and it was groundbreaking at the time. I think historically, cops have relied a lot on, laptops or PCs and stuff like that. But now, with that move to more wearable tech, all of which connect to the internet, there's a lot more that can be examined by digital forensics investigators and adds more to their tool belt in terms of, what can be investigated and where evidence can be acquired from.
I have no doubt that this murder would have devastated Stephen's family and friends, because he seemed to be an extremely popular, well-liked and respected young man with a very bright future ahead. And for him to lose his life in such a way robbed not just him of his future, but those who loved him, their futures with him.
So missed by family, friends. Everybody just misses, And an absolute waste of a life. Through 3 people which to me, I find extraordinary that a town the size of Kirriemuir can have 3 people like that at the same time. People that just didn't care about anything. Life obviously didn't matter. And I just found it such a small town, which is such a nice town. There was these 3 people there, but I've just absolutely destroyed that community and the life of my son, and affected all the other lives in the process.
In February of 2017, Abigail Williams and Liberty German are murdered near Delphi, Indiana. It's a tragedy that launches one of the most divisive crime stories of this century. I'm Dan Semitovich. On my new show, Deviant, I'm spending the next month telling the full story of Delphi as we know it. We'll pull together the evidence and ask the big questions. What happened in those woods that day? Was justice served? Join me as we try to make sense of all of it. Subscribe to Deviant now, wherever you get your podcasts.
A young woman just landed her first big modeling job. A few hours later, she disappeared. The weave pattern on some fabric, the mixture of some concrete, and a dog hair were the keys to the mystery. It was a Friday night in central Illinois, around 10 p.m. A motorist saw an abandoned car along the side of the road. The driver's side door was open, the lights were still on, the engine was running, but there was no one inside.
A purse was inside the car. The inside of the vehicle was a little bit disheveled. It appeared to be a little bit suspicious.
There was no identification in the purse. The car's license plate number was registered to David Swan, a 34-year-old employee of the local newspaper. When police called Swan, he said his girlfriend, Karen Slover, had borrowed his car that night to pick up her 3-year-old son, Christopher, who had spent the day with his grandparents. But the car was nowhere near the grandparents' home. It was 40 miles away, facing in a different direction.
At that point, she's just missing, At that point, we're not sure if it's a kidnap. You assume it's a kidnapping, a hijacking on highway.
Investigators asked family and friends if Karen might simply have run away. Everyone said it was impossible. Friends said Karen had just gotten her first professional modeling job and was excited about it.
She was an aspiring model, and she had received a phone call from Paris International indicating that they were going to possibly offer her some work out of state.
She was very excited about the modeling job. She was flitting around the office with a big smile on her face and pretty much letting everyone know that she was excited about it.
2 days passed. Still, there was no sign of her. Then, 40 miles away, some boaters on Lake Shelbyville noticed something.
They thought it was some garbage, a garbage bag that had floated up to the shoreline. First thing I thought of when I saw that was, this is going to be bad.
Inside the bag was a woman's head. Nearby, police found other garbage bags with the rest of her body.
I realized that there was a missing person from the Friday night before, a female, in a neighboring county. And The thought flashed through my mind that this probably is that missing female from the neighboring county.
Dental records confirmed that the body was Karen Slover. She was just 23 years old.
She liked everybody. Everybody liked her. Who could do such a bizarre thing? You don't think about that happening to you until it does.
The bags were sealed with duct tape. Inside were chunks of cement and cinders consistent with the material found on the floor of the car Karen was driving. Apparently, the killer used the cement to keep the bags underwater, but the body gases most likely raised them to the surface. Analysts found 6 dog hairs stuck to a piece of the tape, but there were no fingerprints found on the tape or the bags. The lake apparently washed away all other trace evidence.
I have been in law enforcement 33 years, and I have seen a lot of carnage. This affected me probably worse than anything that I've ever seen.
At Karen Slover's autopsy, the medical examiner found she was shot in the head 6 times with a .22 caliber handgun at point-blank range.
Somebody was very angry, and I think when the actual murder occurred, absolutely lost control and just continued to shoot until probably the gun was empty.
The last time anyone saw Karen Slover alive was when she left work to pick up her son, who was spending the day with his grandparents.
More than likely, Karen was killed sometime between 5 p.m. When she left her job and 10 o'clock, or roughly 10 o'clock when her car was found out on the interstate.
There was many theories involved. One was she abducted by a pervert, serial killer type investigation?
The first potential suspect was her ex-husband, Michael, the father of her little boy.
There was obviously some violence in that relationship. We talked to several people who indicated that Michael had battered her in the past. I don't think it was a good relationship.
Karen wasn't very fond of Michael's family either. They were the ones babysitting Karen's son, Christopher, on the day of her murder.
Karen had a tough time with her ex-in-laws. They're the ones who watched her son, and it was frequently stressful when she either would go to drop him off or to pick him up.
But Karen's former husband, Michael Slover, had an alibi for the time of Karen's disappearance.
He was working as a security guard at Cub Foods. He had made an arrest that afternoon at Cub Foods. The police had been there.
Since Michael had an alibi, investigators turned their attention to Karen's current boyfriend, David Swan.
He'd had some run-ins with law enforcement. He'd been put on probation in the past. He had pretended to be or impersonate a law enforcement officer in the past. He'd spent time in a mental ward at a hospital.
34-year-old David Swan had been dating Karen for only a short time. A background check revealed a disturbing incident.
He had been involved in killing a deer and then had put the deer over a swimming pool and had used a chainsaw or like instrument to clean the deer. And due to the fact Karen had been dismembered and we weren't exactly sure what the means of dismemberment were, we were interested in information like that.
And David's alibi was shaky. On the night of the murder, he was attending a friend's wedding rehearsal, and witnesses said he was 45 minutes late for the rehearsal dinner that followed. This created a 45-minute window that could not be accounted for.
We were concerned that David Swan was free for a period of time and could have possibly committed the crime during that time period.
I felt like he very, very possibly could have been the one. I remember telling the sheriff that I think I've got the guy.
Karen told friends she dreamt of moving to Georgia to pursue her modeling career. Was it possible that David grew angry over her plans to leave? Investigators brought in a profiler to study David's past.
The FBI profiler indicated that David did match the profile of the type of person that could be responsible for this type of crime.
But investigators had no hard evidence against him, and without it, they couldn't obtain a search warrant. Despite repeated interrogations, he denied having anything to do with Karen's murder. If David Swan was the killer, he might have committed the perfect crime. Police were convinced David Swan was involved in Karen Slover's murder. He had an alibi for the night of her murder, except for a 45-minute period he said he was running some errands. But no one could corroborate that. After 6 months, police decided to interrogate David one last time, hoping he'd incriminate himself.
We all held hands and prayed that, Lord, if this is your will, that if David Swan is in fact the one involved, let us get a confession. If he's not involved, give us a sign we can go elsewhere.
In this last interrogation, police continued to ask where he was on the night of the murder during the time he couldn't account for. The pressure paid off, but not the way police expected. David said that the reason he was late to the rehearsal dinner was that he went to the bank. Investigators went to that bank and checked the ATM surveillance video. It showed David Swan just as he said it would.
We were able to verify through the ATM tapes David Swan did not have a window of opportunity to commit this crime.
With David Swan cleared, there were no other suspects. Investigators feared that Karen Slover's murder might never be solved.
I took it personally. I spent a lot of sleepless nights thinking about this case, wondering what I was missing, what we weren't doing, what we needed to do to actually come up with a killer in this case.
As a last resort, police looked one more time at the crime scene. It was clear there had to be another car at the scene.
There had to be more than one person involved with this. You couldn't leave a vehicle along the interstate and walk back to wherever you left from. Someone had to drive there and pick you up and take you back.
So who would have had the motive and the opportunity to commit this crime? Karen's ex-husband Michael had an alibi for the night of the murder, but his parents did not. They were the ones watching Karen's son Christopher on the day of the murder.
Michael Slover Sr., he works at a power plant up in the Decatur area. And once he clocked out, he has no alibi after that time. Jeanette Slover, who wasn't employed or anything, she had no alibi or anybody could corroborate their alibi.
51-year-old Jeanette Slover detested her ex-daughter-in-law Karen, and everyone knew how much she loved her 3-year-old grandson, Christopher.
I think the relationship between Jeanette and the boy was not normal, that Jeanette treated the boy as her own and actually believed it was her own son.
In fact, she told friends that after Christopher was born, she began breastfeeding him. Investigators checked telephone records and discovered that Michael Jr. called his parents 12 times on the weekend of the murder. Also suspicious, the Slovers owned a used car lot just 1 mile from their house. The lot, patrolled by 2 junkyard dogs, was always dirty and in disrepair. Just after Karen disappeared, neighbors said the lot got a makeover.
Michael Jr. and Michael Sr. were seen by the neighbors out at Miracle Motors out cleaning up the lot, cutting brush, cutting weeds, burning items.
Was it possible they were trying to remove something connected to Karen's murder? To find out, investigators contacted Richard Monroe, a well-known forensic geologist. Concrete and cinders were found with Karen's body. Could he tell if they came from the Slovers' car lot? Both samples were placed in a scanning electron microscope and hit with high-energy radiation.
In a vacuum in the SEM, the darkness that's in the little chamber, there is no light source. The only light that puts in is the X-rays.
This enables the images of the samples to be magnified up to 5,000 times their actual size. Visually, the samples looked similar. Monroe then ground the samples into a powder and bombarded it with X-rays to identify the chemical makeup of the samples. Monroe concluded that the material found in the bag with Karen's body and the material from the car lot were similar enough to raise suspicions. But investigators needed more than that, and to get it, they turned to an unlikely source, the United States Army. More than 2 years after Karen Slover's murder, investigators now suspected that her ex-in-laws were involved. The motive? Karen's former mother-in-law, Jeanette, wanted sole custody of her 3-year-old grandson.
I think Jeanette Slover is filled with rage. I think that the relationship between Jeanette and Karen was not good. I think that Jeanette felt like the boy was her own, that Karen was a threat to take the boy from her, and she had to eliminate the threat.
Investigators found no forensic evidence inside the Slovers' house, but concrete from their used car lot was consistent with concrete found in the garbage bags with Karen's body. Investigators wanted more proof and went to unusual lengths to get it. They called in the Army to help them remove all the topsoil from the Slovers' 5,000-square-foot car lot. During a late winter snowstorm, 60 5-gallon buckets were filled with material. For 6 painstaking months, teams of investigators sifted through the debris. Finally, they found a potential clue. A button that read, Authentic Paris Sports Club. The jeans Karen was found in had the exact same buttons.
I get goosebumps thinking about it right now. Because we had worked
on that sleeve, I want that sleeve.
Scientists took a fiber from the button on Karen's blouse and placed it under a comparison microscope.
Both buttons were composed of a cotton polyester mix.
The next thing was to identify the weave patterns on both buttons.
In this case, we had a simple 1-by-1 weave pattern. And that was consistent both with the button that was found at American Motors and the button that came from the sleeve of Karen Slover.
Both buttons were the same size, made of the same material, covered with the same fabric, with an identical weave pattern. Finally, the Slovers had 2 dogs, and scientists wondered if the hair on the duct tape came from one of them.
The analysis of animal DNA for forensic applications is unusual in that there are probably only 3 or 4 labs in the country that do it.
Only one of the 6 dog hairs from the duct tape provided enough DNA for an analysis.
We concluded that there was a DNA match between the hair on the duct tape and the reference dog, and that therefore the chances were very high that the hairs came from the same dog.
Jeanette and Michael Slover Sr. and their son, Michael Jr., were all charged with first-degree murder. Michael Jr. was charged because he aided his parents in the planning and commission of the crime. The motive, the Slovers were afraid Karen would move out of state, depriving them of time with Christopher. Based on the forensic evidence, prosecutors believe Karen went to the Slovers' car lot to pick up her son. During the dismemberment, buttons from her blouse and jeans fell on the ground. And they used cement and cinders from their lot to give weight to the plastic bags containing Karen's body. Some of the dog hair stuck to the tape they used to close the garbage bags, and its DNA matched the Slovers dog. They dumped Karen's body into Lake Shelbyville and abandoned her car along a deserted highway. But the forensic evidence linked the Slovers to the murder in every imaginable way.
Obviously, this was a highly circumstantial case, but the forensic evidence we had was pretty clear-cut.
Although Michael Jr. was working at the time of the murder, he called his parents 12 times that weekend and helped clean up the crime scene afterwards. Prosecutors were convinced he was actively involved in planning the murder and cover-up. The three Slovers were all convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 60 years in prison.
We were delighted that it was finally over. And the fact that all three of them were found guilty was even a major blessing, because we felt all three of them were involved.
I think the Lord had some intervention in this and put us down the right path. So that's just my little evangelizing to you for what it's worth.
In February of 2017, Abigail Williams and Liberty German are murdered near Delphi, Indiana. It's a tragedy that launches one of the most divisive crime stories of this century. I'm Dan Semitovich. On my new show, Deviant, I'm spending the next month telling the full story of Delphi as we know it. We'll pull together the evidence and ask the big questions. What happened in those woods that day? Was justice served? Join me as we try to make sense of all of it. Subscribe to Deviant now, wherever you get your podcasts.
Up next, a violent thunderstorm provides cover for a brutal murder.
It was an absolutely brutal crime scene.
Obviously, this was a case of an overkill.
There are plenty of suspects with clear motives, but they all pass polygraph tests.
It's not 100% reliable.
If investigators didn't find the one tiny clue left at the scene, they might never have solved it. The real estate development business in Texas always seems to be active. Darrell North, a manager for a multi-billion-dollar development company, had no shortage of work.
Darrell North was in charge of building budget suites for a company out of Las Vegas, and he had been in charge of building several in this area.
Darrell had a reputation as a fair-minded boss who set high standards.
I asked a subcontractor, was Darrell hard to work for? Was he mean? And he said, no, he was not. He said he expected quality work.
I've seen Dad fire numerous subcontractors over the years. My dad had the ability to get his point across very clearly. He's very pointed. He was very direct.
Darrell was always punctual. So when he didn't come home from work one day and didn't answer his phone, his family was concerned.
When I got to the job site, it was after 11 o'clock at night. The lights of his trailer were on, and his car was out front, and I knew his car hadn't been moved because it was dry underneath his vehicle, and when everything else was just drenched.
The door was padlocked. His son knocked on the door, but got no answer.
I climbed up on the rail with a flashlight, trying to shine the flashlight into that dark office, see if Dad had a heart attack or something had happened.
Mark saw his father on the floor.
I saw Dad laying against the door, and he was just laying face down, not moving.
Paramedics and police declared Darrell North dead at the scene. He'd been stabbed repeatedly. Blood was spattered everywhere.
It was an absolutely brutal crime scene, as would be typical with any case where there's multiple stab wounds. There was a tremendous amount of blood.
There was blood in 2 of the 3 rooms. It was obvious a life and death struggle had taken place.
There was also a hole punch that was discovered in very close proximity to Mr. North's body that was bent. That would lead me or any other investigator to believe that either Mr. North may have been struck with that hole punch or Mr. North may have struck his assailant with that hole punch.
There was a trail of blood from the filing cabinet to Darrell's body, then to a desk. On top, police found a machete, the type used to clear brush from construction sites. It was perfectly clean.
It actually wasn't blood-soaked, but we didn't know if it might have been used and then cleaned off and placed there.
Darrell North's secretary told police there were normally 2 machetes in the trailer.
There was a second machete that had gone missing.
Police assumed this was the one, but police and Darrell's family had no idea who it was. Darrell North's autopsy revealed he'd been stabbed 46 times with 2 different weapons. A clear case of overkill.
Overkill, as we define it, is wounding a person way beyond what we require to kill a person. So we frequently see not just a few wounds, but many. And it's all indicative of rage that is going on between the 2 involved in the assault, the victim and the assailant.
A machete missing from his office was believed to be one of the murder weapons. The other was believed to be a knife.
It had a single sharp edge and a blunt edge. We could predict that it was a larger knife. Some of the wounds were at least inch and a half in width on the body surface.
The family tried to help investigators by identifying anyone who might have had a reason to harm Darrell.
I thought it must be a stranger, that maybe was robbing him or something. I could not, in my wildest imagination, believe that someone would do that.
Darrell's secretary told police that everyone left the construction site early on the day of the murder because of the severe rainstorm. She said Darrell stayed behind to meet with a contractor named Curtis Pope.
Curtis Pope was a pool contractor. Darrell was basically mentoring Curtis into the construction business. He stayed approximately 20-25 minutes. He left Darrell. Darrell said he was going to wait out the rain and let the traffic die down before he headed home.
Darrell's wife told police Curtis Pope could not be the killer.
Curtis Pope had done some repair work on our pool. I said, please don't spend your time looking at Curtis Pope. He did not kill Darrell. Please, spend your time looking for the person that did.
Pope was distraught over Darrell's murder.
He came through the receiving line crying, and I thought he was so touched by Darrell's death. And he said, I loved Darrell. He was better to me than my own father.
Pope was 40 years old, married with a young daughter. He did, however, have a police record consisting of arrests for petty theft. Since he was the last known person to see Darrell alive, he was automatically considered a suspect. Pope agreed to take a polygraph examination and passed.
It's not likely that somebody could come in and intentionally be untruthful and still pass the polygraph test.
The next suspect was Bob Johnson, a roofing contractor. Darrell fired Johnson just 2 weeks before his murder.
He was upset that he wasn't going to continue to work there because, according to him, Darrell had promised him continued work.
Daryl's family never met Johnson, but they'd heard of him.
Daryl had mentioned that he had had some problems with him. He usually didn't bring his problems home, and so since it was something that he had shared with me, I thought it was probably serious.
Incredibly, just 2 days after Daryl's murder, Johnson called asking to get his job back.
The superintendent felt like it was odd that Bob Johnson was calling there, when can I come to work, after the fact, after Daryl's been murdered, because his belief was that Daryl didn't want him there.
Johnson said that on the day of the murder, he was with his child in a Dallas hospital. This was verified, but he still had time to commit the murder.
The alibi wasn't sufficient enough, in my mind, to totally exclude him.
But like Curtis Pope, he too passed the polygraph examination.
The polygraph is just a tool. It's not 100% reliable. That's why it's not admissible in court.
If it hadn't rained, maybe we could have gotten fingerprints, but you can't focus on what we could have had. You've got to find what you do have.
Investigators needed forensic evidence to solve this crime and hoped to find some of it at the scene. Daryl North's murder was so violent that forensic tests were needed to make sense of what happened.
We had numerous types of blood stains. They included passive blood drops. We had smears, transfers, and frankly, there was so much blood that you'd be hard-pressed to try to classify some of it as to how it got there.
We took many samples. We took 23 samples of blood from various different parts of that crime scene.
They first had to determine if all the blood had come from Daryl North.
When the assailant is wielding a knife and he stabs a victim, oftentimes that knife blade hits bone and it stops. And oftentimes the killer's hand continues its movement and it slides down the blade and can cut the assailant.
The other clue they looked for was shoe prints. With so much blood, both the killer and the victim would have stepped in it. Crime scene technician Jim Varnon found several shoe prints and tried to enhance them with a special dye.
Amino black works because it stains proteins, and it's applied to protein stain, in this case a blood stain.
In several of the enhanced prints, analysts could clearly see the word Justin, a well-known brand of Texas-made boots.
We knew that these footwear impressions in blood that had the pattern of a Justin heel was most likely going to be from our assailant, because it did not match the only other bleeder at that crime scene, which was our victim.
Unfortunately, these boots weren't unique.
How common are they? You're probably not from here if you don't have a pair.
And it was impossible to tell the size of the boot from the print.
In a Justin boot heel, it is possible that you're going to have one physical size that would overlap into several different boot sizes.
Nevertheless, investigators asked both suspects, Bob Johnson and pool contractor Curtis Pope, if they owned a pair of Justin brand boots. Bob Johnson owned a pair, but the heel of his boots was larger than those at the scene. Curtis Pope also owned a pair of Justin brand boots, which appeared to be new, and willingly turned them over to investigators.
In this case, my result was inconclusive. I could not eliminate or identify the boot as having made that mark.
When investigators talked with Pope about his boots, they noticed something they hadn't seen before. Some bruising under his eye.
There was no cut, but it was a slight bruising.
A background check revealed Pope's business was faltering.
He had a reputation of just not being very good at what he did as far as the construction of these swimming pools.
Pope's business records indicated he was deeply in debt, wasn't able to pay his suppliers, and the only big client he had left was Daryl North. If Darrell fired Pope during their meeting, it would have been the end of Pope's company.
Pope's finances were in terrible shape. He was on the fine edge of disaster all the time.
With a warrant, investigators searched Pope's home computer and found something suspicious.
Someone on that computer had visited a website on how to beat a polygraph and had in fact paid money to download a book on how to beat it.
As testing continued on the bloodstains on the floor of the crime scene, investigators noticed one blood drop on Darrell North's pants that they had previously overlooked.
There was a vertical drop on the back left pant leg of Darrell North while he's laying on the floor.
The shape of the drop was perfectly round, meaning that the origin of the blood was stationary and hit the fabric at a 90-degree angle.
The significance of such a drop falling and hitting the pants perpendicularly while Mr. North is on the floor is that it would mean that the assailant is standing above him, bleeding on him after he has been attacked. So it puts a sequencing to the events.
Max Courtney cut out the stain and submitted it for DNA testing. Investigators found 5 other drops of blood at the scene, perfectly round in between Darrell's body and the door.
And I said, why not let's just test these 5 particular drops of blood that we know or we feel like didn't come from Darrell North.
Tests confirmed the blood was not Darrell North's. There was only one question that remained. Who left the blood? One of the 2 suspects or someone else? This tiny drop of blood on the back of Darrell North's pants told an important story. Since the blood hit Darrell's pants at a 90-degree angle, it meant the killer was standing over Darrell's body while he was bleeding from his own wound, and he continued to bleed as he left the scene.
When we observed those vertical drops of blood leading away from Mr. North's body, that was a very significant thing for us to find, because we knew then that the killer's DNA was going to be present on that scene.
And there was a possible explanation for how the killer was injured. The dented 2-hole paper punch unit found near Darrell North's body. Darrell may have used it to defend himself, causing an injury, a facial cut or nosebleed. To identify the killer, DNA samples were collected from the 2 suspects, Bob Johnson and Curtis Pope. DNA testing revealed it was Curtis Pope's blood at the crime scene.
If Darrell North had not taken some steps to defend himself, this case wouldn't have been solved.
Would have never dreamed that, firing somebody, would cause somebody to, go postal.
Darrell's family couldn't believe that the man whom Darrell had mentored in business and treated in many ways like a son could have done this.
Not until the day they came out here to the house and told me that it was his DNA that had been identified did I really believe.
The bruises police noticed under Pope's eye were probably the result of the fight.
And I was able to examine his arms and his hands for injuries. He didn't have any. There was no cuts.
On the night of Darrell North's murder, the Dallas-Fort Worth area was hit with a driving rainstorm, causing flash floods and power outages. The storm was so bad, Darrell sent his construction crew home early. But he stayed behind because he had a 5 p.m. appointment with Curtis Pope. They were going to discuss quality problems with the swimming pool Pope was installing at the hotel. Pope was having financial problems. His company was headed towards bankruptcy, and Darrell North was his only large client, although it's unclear whether Darrell knew this. No one knows what the 2 men said to each other. But prosecutors believe Curtis Pope snapped and attacked Darrell with a knife. Darrell was caught off guard and struck Pope in the face with a paper punch, causing the nosebleed. Pope stabbed Darrell over 40 times. As he lay dying on the floor, a drop of blood from Pope's nose fell onto Darrell's pants.
There's no way he could have explained away how his blood was dripped onto Darrell North's pants.
We knew we had eliminated any possible innocent explanation for his blood being at the scene, and we felt like we had him.
Curtis Pope was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. He posted bail, but on the first day of his trial, Pope didn't show up.
We learned through an informant that he was headed toward Canada.
That afternoon, police in Watertown, New York, just 25 miles from the Canadian border, stopped a car from driving the wrong way down a one-way street. It was Curtis Pope. He tried to run, but was arrested at a shopping center. Curtis Pope was returned to Texas. He stood trial and was convicted of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison. It was an unusually bloody crime scene, but Darrell North unwittingly provided the evidence needed to convict his killer.
He probably bloodied Curtis Pope's nose. We have always thought Darrell helped to convict Curtis Pope.
The forensic evidence in this case was absolutely the linchpin of the entire case.
This case stands out to me because it is one of the best of the uses of DNA combined with bloodstain pattern analysis. We're working together, the two, show who the blood came from and provide a scenario by which it possibly got there.
In February of 2017, Abigail Williams and Liberty German are murdered near Delphi, Indiana. It's a tragedy that launches one of the most divisive crime stories of this century. I'm Dan Semitovich. On my new show, Deviant, I'm spending the next month telling the full story of Delphi as we know it. We'll pull together the evidence and ask the big questions. What happened in those woods that day? Was justice served? Join me as we try to make sense of all of it. Subscribe to Deviant now, wherever you get your podcasts.
Up next, a college co-ed vanishes without a trace.
The television was still on. It was almost as if her activities had been interrupted.
It's just really scary to think about that it happened here.
Her fellow students prayed for her safe return. Police feared her abductor might be among them.
Everybody was a suspect, but we had no direction to go.
Eventually, the trail led to a barn fire hundreds of miles away. A senseless murder with no motive. Science played a big part in Olamide Adeoye's life. Ever since she was a little girl, she dreamt of a career in medical research. And she was halfway there, entering her senior year at Illinois State University.
Olamide likes science a lot. I could definitely see her going into the forensic field, working in a laboratory, doing DNA analysis.
Olamide worked her way through school as a waitress. Friday nights were usually the busiest. So it was unusual when Olamide didn't show up one Friday when she was scheduled. The next day, she didn't answer repeated calls to her apartment and cell phone.
Her friends and family began to become more worried about Olamide not being able to get a hold of her.
Olamide's car was gone, her apartment locked. When police entered Olamide's apartment, they discovered her purse and her wallet were there. Her cell phone was on the sofa with more than 60 unanswered messages. The television was on. It looked as if she had just gotten up and left until police entered her bedroom.
The search revealed a large pile of clothing on the bedroom floor. When we systematically went through each piece of clothing, we began to see stains of bleach.
The odor of bleach leads all of us to believe that someone is trying to cover up or clean up a crime.
Underneath the clothing, was a large blood stain.
The blood was tested at that time, and it was ultimately identified back to Olamide.
They also found a blood trail leading outside.
There were blood drops down the back porch, down the back steps, down across the parking lot, ending about a foot from where the trunk of Olamide's car would have been.
Someone could have silently carried her down the stairs and placed her in a vehicle in the darkness.
Although Olamide lived in an apartment off campus, her disappearance struck fear among the students.
You're a young female walking around campus. I have a night class, so usually when I get out of school, I walk home. And it's just really scary to think about that it happens here.
Missing posters were put all over campus and the surrounding community. Days went by, but there was still no sign of Olamide.
I'm trying to do everything I can. I mean, I know she'd be doing the same thing for me.
As the search entered its second week, investigators got a potential break from a small town 700 miles away.
A police officer in Mississippi had heard about Olamide and her disappearance by the news media.
He told Illinois police about a body they'd found after a recent barn fire they had in Mississippi. The fire was an arson, and all they knew was that the victim was a young female.
Police were able to get the dental records of Olamide from her family dentist. The records, along with the remains, were taken to a forensic odontologist, and he was able to positively identify the remains as Olamide.
It probably is the worst feeling I've ever felt. I felt horrible for her mother. I felt horrible for her brother. It blows my mind for someone to think that they can kind of play God and take someone else's life.
Investigators now wondered who killed Olamide and why he took her to Mississippi. Students and faculty of Illinois State University gathered on campus to remember Olamide Adeoye.
She pushed people to be their best. She wanted everyone to be their best, including herself.
Her family was understandably frustrated, not knowing who was responsible or why.
When you think of Olamide, remember the young, beautiful woman who had a hunger for knowledge, intelligent, and who wanted to help others.
At the autopsy, the medical examiner concluded that Olamide's death occurred long before the fire started.
The cause of death, in the medical examiner's opinion, was exsanguination, which means loss of blood due to a penetrating injury.
Investigators began their search for the killer by looking into Olamide's friends, associates, any possible enemies, and certainly anyone who had ties to Mississippi. On the night Olamide disappeared, friends said she had a date planned with a new boyfriend.
We talked about how she was excited about going out on a date with a gentleman named Partisse.
Partisse was 25-year-old Partisse Harvester, a criminal justice major at the university. When interviewed by police, Partisse claimed Olamide canceled their date at the last minute.
Sometime around 10 p.m.
Yes.
He gave her a call.
Yes. Pretty exact.
Where were you when you called her?
At home.
You were at home?
Yes.
That time she told you she changed her mind.
Yes.
And she ran some movies and decided to just kind of call it a night and stay home.
Exactly.
Partisse denied any involvement in the crime.
The fact that she had canceled a date with a guy on the very night that she's last seen alive is certainly something that's going to jump out.
Another suspect was Olamide's former boyfriend, Andy Foley, a guitar player in a band. The two had recently broken up.
They loved each other a lot, but it was definitely hard for them to be away from each other for such a long period of time.
But Foley provided an airtight alibi.
Andy was actually on tour, and he was actually on the East Coast, and other band members of his verified his whereabouts on the night of her disappearance.
something else happened on the day she disappeared. Olamide told friends about an incident that happened while she was taking a shower in the afternoon. One of Olamide's former roommates, Ashley Todd Martin, had entered Olamide's apartment uninvited through the unlocked front door.
This apparently angered Olamide. Ashley's attitude was, why don't you have your door locked while you're taking a shower?
Olamide and Ashley had recently decided to live separately.
Olamide didn't want to be around this girl anymore. According to Olamide's close friends from home, this girl seemed to be a bad influence on Olamide, and they were concerned about Olamide's relationship with this girl.
I'd heard them have a couple of fights sometimes. You know, I'd be on the phone and they'd be fighting with each other, and she wasn't normal when she fought with her. It wasn't the Olamide that I knew.
Ashley Todd Martin vehemently denied any involvement in Olamide's disappearance. But police thought her constant appearances on television newscasts to discuss Olamide were suspicious.
It's like I feel bad, I feel guilty, but I'm just glad that you don't have to sit here and wonder whether she's being hurt or tortured or, you know, she's just peaceful now.
It appeared to be more about Ashley than about Olamide.
Since there were no signs of forced entry into Olamide Adeoye's apartment, investigators worked under the assumption that Olamide was acquainted with her killer. An informant called police suggesting Olamide's neighbor might have been responsible.
We were contacted by a woman who had seen the news coverage of Olamide's disappearance. This woman was concerned that an ex-boyfriend of hers may have been involved in Olamide's disappearance.
The man was 27-year-old Maurice Wallace. He lived in a building about 100 yards from Olamide's apartment. Though not a college student, Wallace had been living on or near campus for years. Many students remembered him, and not fondly.
He would invite himself to parties. People described him as kind of creepy and strange, women especially.
He wasn't a student. He wasn't a member of the community. He was a bad person. He was a bad person. And myself and 25,000 other 20-somethings in Normal will attest to that.
A background check revealed Maurice Wallace had served 4 months in jail shortly before Olamide's murder.
Maurice Wallace had assaulted and battered someone in a taxi cab. It was a situation where he didn't know the victim prior to the assault, and it was another example of his unpredictability and aggressiveness.
After he was released, Wallace had trouble finding work, and he told a former girlfriend he was planning to commit violence.
He has said some very disturbing things. He was going to make a name for himself or become a martyr by going out and killing someone.
Wallace also expressed his opinions on race.
He seemed to have a lot of opinions about society and racism and his take on what was wrong with society as a whole. He had indicated that he wanted to marry a Nigerian woman.
Witnesses said Olamide and Wallace met once, and that Wallace told Olamide he objected to her dating white men.
There was one occasion where he had attended a party and Olamide was there, and he was kind of harassed at Olamide about her boyfriend.
But was this a possible motive for murder?
We think he may have been upset with her. You know, she's part of the problem because she's not promoting her race. She's a sellout, if that's the term that he would use.
When police went to question him, he was gone. Neighbors said he hadn't been around since Olamide went missing.
He did not have a vehicle, and the fact that Olamide's vehicle was missing, that pointed even more directly towards Wallace.
Nationwide alerts were issued for Wallace and for Olamide's car.
When we say that, yes, we have reason to believe that he's involved or has knowledge, that does not rule out that there could be other individuals. There very well could be. So we're still looking at that because we don't have all the pieces put together yet.
Wallace's credit card activity showed he purchased gasoline in Mississippi the day after Olamide disappeared. The gas station was near the barn where Olamide's body was discovered.
What we hoped to find out was, did he purchase gas or an accelerant there that could be used to start the fire?
Unfortunately, there were no video surveillance cameras at that gas station. Investigators discovered Wallace did have a connection to Mississippi.
Wallace had some connection to Mississippi in that he had some relatives that were there.
While investigators searched for Wallace, they also had to search for forensic evidence, and they weren't having much luck inside Olamide's apartment.
It's a common misconception that there are hundreds of fingerprints left at every crime scene. And a lot of times you may only find one, or you may find none.
Since the crime was committed at night, investigators assumed the killer would have turned off the lights after cleaning up the blood. But there were no visible blood stains on the light switch by the door.
That whole area was actually brought into the laboratory. They cut out the wall and took the light switch and brought in all of that to us.
Analysts viewed the switch plate with oblique or angled lighting.
We take various different types of light sources, and we bring them in from the side, from the front, to see if we can see anything on the surface itself.
And that's where they found a single high-quality fingerprint, and it looked like it was in plasma.
Not all blood is red or brownish like you would think. There are other components in the blood that are clear. The plasma is a clear substance.
DNA testing showed the blood was Olamide's, which meant the print probably belonged to whoever harmed her.
That was key. There's not a whole lot of innocent explanation for that. It's like finding a print of her blood on a murder weapon.
But where was Maurice Wallace? Investigators found a fingerprint on the light switch in Olamide Adeoye's apartment. The print didn't match Olamide's former roommate, Ashley Todd Martin, or any of the other suspects questioned in the case. But police were still searching for their prime suspect, Maurice Wallace. According to his credit card activity, he was traveling throughout the southern United States. To track him more closely, investigators focused on his cell phone activity.
Through cellular phone forensics, we were able to locate very specifically where Maurice Wallace was in real time.
When Wallace made a call from a shopping mall in Atlanta, Georgia, police were standing by.
When police arrested Maurice Wallace, they found Olamide's keys in his possession, which was a big giveaway at that point.
Wallace wasn't driving Olamide's car. He was driving a rental car instead.
There was a gas can that was located in his rental vehicle. We suspected it may have been used to start this fire.
Wallace denied any involvement in Olamide's murder.
Got to go ahead and read you a couple things. I'm sure you know. Where's my attorney? Why am I here without an attorney? You're going to ask me some questions. 9 times out of 10, whatever I answer is going to be used against me. So I want an attorney.
When police left the room, Wallace was alone. Unaware he was being recorded, he made what looked like a speech to himself.
Any sort of insurgency or revolution, you don't just go at the oppressor, you go at the people who help the oppressor, people who aid and abet the oppressor. Send a message that if you cooperate with these people, we're gonna whack you.
This revealed a potential motive for Olamide's murder.
We think he may have been upset with her for dating a white man.
When police compared Wallace's fingerprint to the bloody fingerprint found in Olamide's bedroom, it was a match. 10 days after Wallace's arrest, police found Olamide's car abandoned in a residential area of Atlanta. Olamide's blood was discovered in the trunk. They also found bloody fingerprints on the rearview mirror.
I was able then to powder and lift those impressions and then lift them off of the rearview mirror and then do a comparison.
One of these was Maurice Wallace's thumbprint. DNA testing identified the blood as Olamide's. Investigators also found evidence on Wallace's genes.
To the naked eye, it didn't appear that there was anything unusual about them. However, later forensic testing found there was blood on those pants.
And that blood was Olamide's. Definitive proof that Wallace was her killer. Police believe Olamide let Wallace into her apartment. She knew him from the neighborhood. Once inside, he may have made a sexual advance and was rejected. He then snapped. He stabbed Olamide, getting blood on his jeans. He wrapped her body in a blanket and put Olamide's body in the trunk of her car. He tried to clean the bloodstains with detergent found in the apartment. But as he turned off the light, he left his fingerprint on the switch plate in plasma and left his bloody thumbprint on the rearview mirror. Then drove to Mississippi to burn her body. He found an old barn, put Olamide's body inside, then set it on fire. The entire barn burned to the ground. Forensic odontology identified her remains, although Wallace probably thought no one in Mississippi would connect this fire to a girl's disappearance in Illinois. In December of 2005, Maurice Wallace was charged with first-degree murder. His aberrant behavior didn't end with his arrest.
Maurice Wallace was very combative during court hearings. One occasion, he spit on the floor as he entered the courtroom, talking when he was not supposed to be talking, interrupting the judge.
Because of the evidence against him, Wallace pled guilty and was sentenced to life in prison.
Maurice Wallace is a sociopath. He's evil. He certainly knew what he was doing every step of the way here. He had a plan. He carried it out. Didn't have any regard to his victim.
He was just an evil man that did what he told his friend on the phone. He was going to go out and kill somebody and try to make a name for himself.
When the victim has been murdered or is no longer alive, the only thing that's left to be able to speak for that person is the evidence itself.
In February of 2017, Abigail Williams and Liberty German are murdered near Delphi, Indiana. It's a tragedy that launches one of the most divisive crime stories of this century. I'm Dan Semitovich. On my new show, Deviant, I'm spending the next month telling the full story of Delphi as we know it. We'll pull together the evidence and ask the big questions. What happened in those woods that day? Was justice served? Join me as we try to make sense of all of it. Subscribe to Deviant now, wherever you get your podcasts.
Up next, a college co-ed vanishes without a trace.
The television was still on. It was almost as if her activities had been interrupted.
It's just really scary to think about that it happens here.
Her fellow students prayed for her safe return. Police feared her abductor might be among them.
Everybody was a suspect, but we had no direction to go.
Eventually, the trail led to a barn fire hundreds of miles away. A senseless murder with no motive. Science played a big part in Olamide Adeoye's life. Ever since she was a little girl, she dreamt of a career in medical research. And she was halfway there, entering her senior year at Illinois State University.
Olamide likes science a lot. I could definitely see her going into the forensic field, working in a laboratory, doing DNA analysis.
Olamide worked her way through school as a waitress. Friday nights were usually the busiest. So it was unusual when Olamide didn't show up one Friday when she was scheduled. The next day, She didn't answer repeated calls to her apartment and cell phone.
Her friends and family began to become more worried about Olamide not being able to get a hold of her.
Olamide's car was gone, her apartment locked. When police entered Olamide's apartment, they discovered her purse and her wallet were there. Her cell phone was on the sofa with more than 60 unanswered messages. The television was on. It looked as if she had just gotten up and left until police entered her bedroom.
The search revealed a large pile of clothing on the bedroom floor. When we systematically went through each piece of clothing, we began to see stains of bleach.
The odor of bleach leads all of us to believe that someone is trying to cover up or clean up a crime.
Underneath the clothing was a large blood stain.
The blood was tested at that time, and it was ultimately identified back to Olamide.
They also found a blood trail leading outside.
There were blood drops down the back porch, down the back steps, down across the parking lot, ending about a foot from where the trunk of Olamide's car would have been.
Someone could have silently carried her down the stairs and placed her in a vehicle in the darkness.
Although Olamide lived in an apartment off campus, her disappearance struck fear among the students.
You're a young female walking around campus. I have a night class, so usually when I get out of school, I walk home. And it's just really scary to think about that it happens here.
Missing posters were put all over campus and the surrounding community. Days went by, but there was still no sign of Olamide.
I'm trying to do everything I can. I mean, I know she'd be doing the same thing for me.
As the search entered its second week, investigators got a potential break from a small town 700 miles away.
A police officer in Mississippi had heard about Olamide and her disappearance by the news media.
He told Illinois police about a body they'd found after a recent barn fire they had in Mississippi. The fire was an arson, and all they knew was that the victim was a young female.
Police were able to get the dental records of Olamide from her family dentist. The records, along with the remains, were taken to a forensic odontologist, and he was able to positively identify the remains as Olamide.
It probably is the worst feeling I've ever felt. I felt horrible for her mother. I felt horrible for her brother. It blows my mind for someone to think that they can kind of play God and take someone else's life.
Investigators now wondered who killed Olamide and why he took her to Mississippi. Students and faculty of Illinois State University gathered on campus to remember Olamide Adeoye.
She pushed people to be their best. She wanted everyone to be their best, including herself.
Her family was understandably frustrated, not knowing who was responsible or why.
When you think of Olamide, remember the young, beautiful woman who had a hunger for knowledge, intelligent, and who wanted to help others.
At the autopsy, the medical examiner concluded that Olamide's death occurred long before the fire started.
The cause of death, in the medical examiner's opinion, was exsanguination, which means loss of blood due to a penetrating injury.
Investigators began their search for the killer by looking into Olamide's friends, associates, any possible enemies, and certainly anyone who had ties to Mississippi. On the night Olamide disappeared, friends said she had a date planned with a new boyfriend.
We had talked about how she was excited about going out on a date with a gentleman named Partis.
Partis was 25-year-old Partis Harvester, a criminal justice major at the university. When interviewed by police, Partis claimed Olamide canceled their date at the last minute.
Sometime around 10 p.m.
Yes, it was around.
He gave her a call.
Yes, 3 days after.
Where were you when you called her then?
At home.
You were at home? Yes. That time she told you she changed her mind? Yes. And she had rented some movies and decided to just kind of call it a night and stay home. Exactly.
Partisse denied any involvement in the crime.
The fact that she had canceled a date with the guy on the very night that she's last seen alive is certainly something that's going to jump out.
Another suspect was Olamide's former boyfriend, Andy Foley, a guitar player in a band. The two had recently broken up.
They loved each other a lot, but it was definitely hard for them to be away from each other for such a long period of time.
But Foley provided an airtight alibi.
Andy was actually on tour, and he was actually on the East Coast, and other band members of his verified his whereabouts on the night of her disappearance.
Something else happened on the day she disappeared. Olamide told friends about an incident that happened while she was taking a shower in the afternoon. One of Olamide's former roommates, Ashley Todd Martin, had entered Olamide's apartment uninvited through the unlocked front door.
This apparently angered Olamide, and Ashley's attitude was, why don't you have your door locked while you're taking a shower?
Olamide and Ashley had recently decided to live separately.
Olamide didn't want to be around this girl anymore. According to Olamide's close friends from home, this girl seemed to be a bad influence on Olamide, and they were concerned about Olamide's relationship with this girl.
I'd heard them have a couple of fights sometimes. You know, I'd be on the phone and they'd be fighting with each other, and she wasn't normal when she fought with her. It wasn't the Olamide that I knew.
Ashley Todd Martin vehemently denied any involvement in Olamide's disappearance. But police thought her constant appearances on television newscasts to discuss Olamide were suspicious.
It's like I feel bad, I feel guilty, but I'm just glad that you don't have to sit here and wonder whether she's being hurt or tortured or, she's just peaceful now.
It appeared to be more about Ashley than about Olamide.
Since there were no signs of forced entry into Olamide Adeoye's apartment, investigators worked under the assumption that Olamide was acquainted with her killer. An informant called police suggesting Olamide's neighbor might have been responsible.
We were contacted by a woman who had seen the news coverage of Olamide's disappearance. This woman was concerned that an ex-boyfriend of hers may have been involved in Olamide's disappearance.
The man was 27-year-old Maurice Wallace. He lived in a building about 100 yards from Olamide's apartment. Though not a college student, Wallace had been living on or near campus for years. Many students remembered him, and not fondly.
He would invite himself to parties. People described him as kind of creepy and strange, women especially.
He wasn't a student. He wasn't a member of the community. He was a bad person. And myself and 25,000 other 20-somethings in Normal will attest to that.
A background check revealed Maurice Wallace had served 4 months in jail shortly before Olamide's murder.
Maurice Wallace had assaulted and battered someone in a taxi cab. It was a situation where he didn't know the victim prior to the assault, and it was another example of his unpredictability and aggressiveness.
After he was released, Wallace had trouble finding work, and he told a former girlfriend he was planning to commit violence.
He has said some very disturbing things. He was going to make a name for himself or become a martyr by going out and killing someone.
Wallace also expressed his opinions on race.
He seemed to have a lot of opinions about society and racism and his take on what was wrong with society as a whole. He had indicated that he wanted to marry a Nigerian woman.
Witnesses said Olamide and Wallace met once, and that Wallace told Olamide he objected to her dating white men.
There was one occasion where he had attended a party and Olamide was there, and he was kind of harassing Olamide about her boyfriend.
But was this a possible motive for murder?
We think he may have been upset with her. You know, she's part of the problem because she's not promoting her race. She's a sellout, if that's the term that he would use.
When police went to question him, he was gone. Neighbors said he hadn't been around since Olamide went missing.
He did not have a vehicle, and the fact that Olamide's vehicle was missing, that pointed even more directly towards Wallace.
Nationwide alerts were issued for Wallace and for Olamide's car.
When we say that, yes, we have reason to believe that he's involved or has knowledge, that does not rule out that there could be other individuals. There very well could be. So we're still looking at that because we don't have all the pieces put together yet.
Wallace's credit card activity showed he purchased gasoline in Mississippi the day after Olamide disappeared. The gas station was near the barn where Olamide's body was discovered.
What we hoped to find out was, did he purchase gas or an accelerant there that could be used to start the fire?
Unfortunately, there were no video surveillance cameras at that gas station. Investigators discovered Wallace did have a connection to Mississippi.
Wallace had some connection to Mississippi in that he had some relatives that were there.
While investigators searched for Wallace, they also had to search for forensic evidence, and they weren't having much luck inside Olamide's apartment.
It's a common misconception that there are hundreds of fingerprints left at every crime scene. And a lot of times you may only find one, or you may find none.
Since the crime was committed at night, investigators assumed the killer would have turned off the lights after cleaning up the blood. But there were no visible blood stains on the light switch by the door.
That whole area was actually brought into the laboratory. They cut out the wall and took the light switch and brought in all of that to us.
Analysts viewed the switch plate with oblique or angled lighting.
We take various different types of light sources, and we bring them in from the side, from the front, to see if we can see anything on the surface itself.
And that's where they found a single high-quality fingerprint, and it looked like it was in plasma.
Not all blood is red or brownish like you would think. There are other components in the blood that are clear. The plasma is a clear substance.
DNA testing showed the blood was Olamide's, which meant the print probably belonged to whoever harmed her.
That was key. There's not a whole lot of innocent explanation for that. It's like finding a print of her blood on a murder weapon.
But where was Maurice Wallace? Investigators found a fingerprint on the light switch in Olamide Adeoye's apartment. The print didn't match Olamide's former roommate Ashley Todd Martin or any of the other suspects questioned in the case. But police were still searching for their prime suspect, Maurice Wallace. According to his credit card activity, he was traveling throughout the southern United States. To track him more closely, investigators focused on his cell phone activity.
Through cellular phone forensics, we were able to locate very specifically where Maurice Wallace was in real time.
When Wallace made a call from a shopping mall in Atlanta, Georgia, police were standing by.
Please don't move, please. When police arrested Maurice Wallace, they found Olamide's keys in his possession, which was a big giveaway at that point.
Wallace wasn't driving Olamide's car. He was driving a rental car instead.
There was a gas can that was located in his rental vehicle. We suspected it may have been used to start this fire.
Wallace denied any involvement in Olamide's murder.
Got to go ahead and read you a couple things. I'm sure you know. Where's my attorney? Why am I here without an attorney? You're going to ask me some questions. 9 times out of 10, whatever I answer is going to be used against me. So I want an attorney.
When police left the room, Wallace was alone. Unaware he was being recorded, he made what looked like a speech to himself.
any sort of insurgency or revolution, you don't just go at the oppressor, you go at the people who help the oppressor, people who aid and abet the oppressor. Send a message that if you cooperate with these people, we're gonna whack you.
This revealed a potential motive for Olamide's murder.
We think he may have been upset with her for dating a white man.
When police compared Wallace's fingerprint to the bloody fingerprint found in Olamide's bedroom, it was a match. 10 days after Wallace's arrest, police found Olamide's car abandoned in a residential area of Atlanta. Olamide's blood was discovered in the trunk. They also found bloody fingerprints on the rearview mirror.
I was able then to powder and lift those impressions and then lift them off of the rearview mirror and then do a comparison.
One of these was Maurice Wallace's thumbprint. DNA testing identified the blood as Olamide's. Investigators also found evidence on Wallace's jeans.
To the naked eye, it didn't appear that there was anything unusual about them. However, later forensic testing found there was blood on those pants.
And that blood was Olamide's. Definitive proof that Wallace was her killer. Police believe Olamide let Wallace into her apartment. She knew him from the neighborhood. Once inside, he may have made a sexual advance and was rejected. He then snapped. He stabbed Olamide, getting blood on his jeans. He wrapped her body in a blanket and put Olamide's body in the trunk of her car. He tried to clean the bloodstains with detergent found in the apartment. But as he turned off the light, he left his fingerprint on the switch plate in plasma and left his bloody thumbprint on the rearview mirror. Then drove to Mississippi to burn her body. He found an old barn, put Olamide's body inside, then set it on fire. The entire barn burned to the ground. Forensic odontology identified her remains, although Wallace probably thought no one in Mississippi would connect this fire to a girl's disappearance in Illinois. In December of 2005, Maurice Wallace was charged with first-degree murder. His aberrant behavior didn't end with his arrest.
Maurice Wallace was very combative during court hearings. One occasion, he spit on the floor as he entered the courtroom, talking when he was not supposed to be talking, interrupting the judge.
Because of the evidence against him, Wallace pled guilty and was sentenced to life in prison.
Maurice Wallace is a sociopath. He's evil. He certainly knew what he was doing every step of the way here. He had a plan. He carried it out. Didn't have any regard to his victim.
He was just an evil man that did what he told his friend on the phone. He was going to go out and kill somebody and try to make a name for himself.
When the victim has been murdered or is no longer alive, the only thing that's left to be able to speak for that person is the evidence itself.